Hi! Surprise! I guess I could have put in the chat I was taking the overlay away. I made sure to look that you weren't doing anything embarrassing, though, so that's good. Alrighty, I gotta look through that. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our little virtual talk back for this summer's Shakespeare production of Macbeth. We've been doing these after every Shakespeare show since Taming of the Shrew, which would have been prime COVID 2020. And it's just been a nice thing to do after the fact, considering just kind of how brief these productions are. In the past, it's been a day. This time a little different, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, so thanks for joining us. I also want to thank my wonderful panelists, I suppose, cast and crew, Teresa, Jara, Hannah, and Josiah for joining me. Obviously all involved in Macbeth, different levels of involvement with Shakespeare, with play-by-play. But I also asked them to join for this because they also haven't done one of our Shakespeare talkbacks before. So it's always nice to get new people doing these every year. So I'm going to start us off with, oh, wait, here we go. I got comments. Oh, hello. Yes, great. As you're watching, please feel free, add your questions, comments in the chat. We're live on both Facebook and YouTube. And if you're watching this on a replay, feel free to ask anyway, because I'm sure play-by-play, aka me, will hop in and answer that for you. All right. Well, I would love to start off by just maybe having everybody introduce themselves, what their role was in this production, and maybe just a little tidbit about what got you interested in Shakespeare. So I'll go first. I'm Carolyn. I'm the director. I also played Lady Macbeth. And I got really into Shakespeare very famously in 5th grade. Famously or infamously. In 5th grade, our drama teacher made it a requirement that all 5th graders did a production of Shakespeare. And when my 5th grade class got to do it, it was Macbeth. And I learned later on that she chose the plays based on the personality of her students. So I don't really know what that says about my 5th grade class. But hey, all of this came out of it. So thank you, Dana Vegan Goldberg, for that.
That is hilarious. I can go. I am Teresa. I was the assistant director for this production, and I ended up stepping in as we had more requests for the production. I was able to fill in as Seward and also Which One. Weird Sister number 1. Yes. And so let's see. What hooked me on Shakespeare to begin with was, oh my gosh, 500,000 years ago. I got to see my brother perform as Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. I think I was in 6th grade, and it was the beginning of the Atlanta Shakespeare Company. And just seeing it live and like in this pub atmosphere, I was completely enthralled. And seeing Shakespeare had Shakespeare more sense. And I kind of worshiped my brother at the time. So yes, I was into Shakespeare.
Oh, I think you have a fan.
I guess if we go in the order of talking heads,
Let's do it. That's the nice thing about StreamYard versus Zoom. We're all in the same order on all of our screens.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like,
I know. Oh, cool.
My name is Jared Dockstader, and I got my start in Shakespeare in high school. It would have been 1 year. Our director for our one act, competitive one act that we did decided to do a cutting of Macbeth for one act. So I played the messenger in that. It was a nice light introductory role to to Shakespeare in general. And then from then, I've kind of just continued to chase whatever opportunities. It's because it's not often done, depending on where you are. And I mean, it's a lot of work, as we all know. So. But yeah, I got my start in high school. I was a late bloomer on all the Shakespeare. Couldn't do anything in 5th grade or 6th grade like some of y'all.
Yeah, my name is Josiah, and I played the role of Macbeth. I would say the one thing that got me interested in Shakespeare was seeing the production of Shakespeare in the Park last year of Much Ado. It looked really fun. It looked like the cast had a lot of fun, and it also looked very challenging. And I felt like I was up for a challenge, and so I auditioned, and I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, you took on the challenge. You said, I'll take a challenge, and you got the challenge.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, a lot of learning, but definitely a challenge for sure.
Hello, Hannah. We're Sister Witch 3, and then I was Gentlewoman in, what was the last two? The Heritage Hill and the Titletown production. What got me into Shakespeare was I was in high school, and I reread Romeo and Juliet, I think my sophomore year. And I was like astounded by the wordplay. Like we would read a piece and then we would talk about how it would relate to modern day or whatever. And I was just like, this is so cool. And then my drama teacher, Miss Hinsredu, said she's like you, Caroline, like just Shakespeare obsessed. And she wanted to do Midsummer Night's Dream for my senior play. And then I got cast as Puck, and I was a little nervous because it was my first time doing Shakespeare. And then I was hooked ever since. I loved it so much. It's wonderful and amazing. So
Yay. All right. Thanks, guys. So I've got some questions here prepared to help kick things off. So some of this we kind of already answered. Have you studied Shakespeare in the past? And if not, or even if you did, no matter what your experience was, how did you prepare for this production? I won't answer first.
I studied in high school, like I said, I did. And then my senior year, I actually took a British literature class where we covered a lot of Shakespeare's plays more in depth than normal. And then when I was in college too, when I lived in London, I took a Shakespeare course, which was kind of, I mean, Carolyn, you know how that's like
that's the way to do it.
Globe and then see a play. And then I got to go Stratford upon Avon, and it was like where he was buried, and I cried, and it was amazing. But yeah, that's the way to go. I can recommend it to anybody. Yeah. But yeah, it was really cool to study it there, for sure. And then to prepare for this production, I watched a lot of YouTube videos of different productions of the show to kind of see how the witches were portrayed and how they did their stuff.
Yeah, I know some people are very like, I don't watch other things, but I think it's nice and helpful, because not necessarily to give you ideas of what you want to do, but just to help you understand or maybe see like, oh, that's interesting. I don't want to do that.
Well, and I think
I find it very helpful, actually.
Totally. I think so too, because you want to see, like, if you haven't seen the show performed in a while, which I hadn't, it was kind of nice to refresh myself on how the scenes would go and, the flow and everything of it as well.
Yeah.
I agree. And I did the same thing. I was YouTubing lots of different to see, because there's so many different interpretations of every play. And so, and the stories, I find finding those clips and seeing other performances helps me figure out how do I make it relevant today to make sure it's communicated, because it is relevant, but it's like, we're obviously it's Elizabethan English. It's not how we speak, but so how to still understand what's happening. Yeah. And yeah, be like, oh, okay, I see what that choice that they made. And I'm like, I'm not feeling that. So, but then I see that exactly what both of you said. It's very fascinating to see how many different interpretations, especially of Macbeth, are out there currently.
Yeah. And also, and we've talked about this too, Teresa, when we were doing our, the non-actor prep for the production. Looking at filmed versions of stage productions versus films.
Yes. Yes.
Which very different. And as much as I love certain films, like I love the Denzel Washington film of Macbeth that just came out. I love it. I made sure not to reference it or go back to it at all during this, because the medium is just so different.
Yes.
And translates so differently.
Yes, completely. Yeah. And it could have been very confusing because obviously it's film. So there's more that can be done subtly as an actor, which you can't do when you're doing a live production, and especially a part where there's hundreds of people. Like, you have to be big. You can't just assume a subtle thing with your face is going to carry. And I think that was especially a big part for, not to totally focus on him, but Josiah, because of everything there's so much that Macbeth is internally going through. But of course, being that it's Shakespeare, he's going to say it out loud so that we know that, and he's internally going through it. And I agree with you too. If we were to focus on that most recent film production, it could have been confusing for the audience to know everything. Mm-hmm.
Well, we could put Josiah on the spot. Okay. Also, if anyone watching has any specific questions for Josiah, get them in soon, because he has to leave us at 7:00. But Josiah, since you said that, I mean, you're like relatively very recently new to Shakespeare. How did you find preparing for, I mean, not just Shakespeare, but the dude?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I found when I was diving into it was that there are a ton of resources out there, and a ton of sources to go to find, I don't know, how to interpret what Macbeth is going through. But what I found was most helpful was when we had those sessions where it was just you, Teresa, myself, and Mary, and we sat down and we kind of broke down the monologues and the soliloquies that Macbeth goes through. Those are really helpful for me, because I mean, as much as I try to read through them, I get stuck in my own interpretation. So I will say that one very, very helpful tool is to hear other people's interpretation of it. So just like Hannah said, watching YouTube videos, I mean, Sir Ian McKellen has, some great takes on it all. But also, yeah, like I said, just working with you all in those very intimate sessions definitely helped me a lot to internalize what he was going through, those shifts in his behavior and his mindset, for sure.
Yeah, and it was useful for me too. I mean, I know a lot about Shakespeare, and I won't shy away from that, but I will say that Macbeth is a play that I know a lot about. Like, I'm very, very confident in my knowledge of it and my love for it. But even in those smaller sessions and we dissected things, I even found new ways of looking at things and started backtracking on what I originally had planned and what I originally had thought. So it was really fun to rediscover or just discover new things, working with different people in different perspectives. It was really, really eye-opening and really helpful as well.
Yeah, that was some really neat times when we would do that line by line, and just how even just, I don't know, there was something, it was like we were all able to put it under a microscope And then so many times, right, where Shakespeare would intentionally use things that start over and over again with S or whatever, just the way his use of words and just the allusions and analogies that it would bring up, different metaphors that it would bring up kind of in my own memory, and then being able to voice that back to you guys to see then, oh, how does that work with you developing yourself as Lady M or Macbeth? I just think of because he makes those references of what scorpions in my brain, and just I remember there being a lot of S words, as you were more and more losing it. So it was really a really interesting and fascinating exercise of going through that to just that bit of a minute detail
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out.
Yeah. The text is there. The text has everything for you. Just saying. Jared, did you have anything to add on to this question? How you prepared or anything like that?
No, I think everyone's as a merit to the strength of the cast. Everyone has very good, very good answers. I'd say part of what's really helpful in that same vein is having, especially in those early rehearsal process days, having such a strong cast of people around you at varying degrees of their own prep and study of the text, as it were, is really helpful. Having something to play off of even early in a rehearsal process, where you can see that the people around you that are looking for the meaning in the text, and looking for ways to kind of make that ring true for the audience. But then that does help when you're on stage with everyone else to have something believable to follow or pay attention to or react to. So I think that's been really nice with the play-by-play productions in general. Is we've got a strong group of people that continue to come out of the woodwork as well. Josiah coming in hot.
Yeah. Coming in hot.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, since we literally just mentioned the Denzel Washington film, this just came in. I'd love to know if any of you saw the Joel Coen directed film, The Tragedy of Macbeth, in 2021 with Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand. If so, and what did you thought of it? Yes. And I very much liked it. Except I did not like what they did with the character Ross. Did not like it. They tried to make him like this power-grabbing character, and kind of was he the one that was helping to kill people? It was weird. I didn't like him, what they did with him. But I was a fan as a film. I really liked what they did, and how they interpreted the play. And actually, it was because of that film that I originally wanted the weird sisters to double as multiple characters. Because that's what, horrible, I forget her name. She's a very well-known actress who played the witch. She played all three witches, but she also played other characters like the old man and whatever. And so originally I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that would be so cool if the witches also double as the murderers, also double as the doctor, gentleman, this, that, and the other thing. So that was one of my early options. But then it also came to, wow, we had so many people audition, so I didn't do as much doubling as I originally had intended. But that was an original long ago thought to do because of this film.
I wish I could remember the actress's name, but I know the Weird Sister. I watched that one a bunch. It was so, just because I was so enthralled by it. Was it the one where she's on the beach, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and she does that whole. I think I watched it 10 times in a row. It was so good.
Yeah.
Oh, and so creepy. And so oh God, it was so good.
Here's a good question for y'all. How does working on a tragedy compare to working on a comedy? And what was everyone's favorite part of working on this production of Macbeth? If anyone has an answer to any of those.
Well,
I guess I'll say my favorite part of working on this production was just what Jara said. I mean, the varying levels of expertise from all the castmates. Um, I was able to learn so much from everybody. I mean, just watching everybody's process and then picking up how different people get into character. Um, those are things that I'll take with me to my next productions. So um, I would definitely say that, yeah, that would be my favorite part of working on this production is just watching everybody else get into their mode, get into their character, and how they develop their sense of being throughout the play.
Nice.
I think speaking to the working on a comedy compared to a decidedly not comedy, it's very interesting. I think because when you talk about understanding the text, you still have to have that on the comedic. Like you still need to understand the joke that you're trying to put out there. So there's still that same amount of I think prep work at least for me, a lot of structure needs to happen when I'm doing a lot of my prep, regardless of the comedic or tragic nature. But there's I'd say the biggest difference is how you generate, like personally in acting and performance, is how you continue your momentum in what it might be. So the comedic momentum compared to something more tragic like Macbeth, where in both aspects you have the ability to go too much, too fast, and then you're stuck. Whether it's something really comedic and over the top, or something very tragic happening, and you're responding to that. It's interesting having to try and harness that same amount of energy, but in different ways, based on what you're trying to do, whether it's getting a laugh or hopefully everyone's holding their breath and sitting at the edge of their seat, paying attention to what you're saying. So it's very different in that way, I think.
Yeah. I think, I don't want to say one's easier, one's harder, but I find, at least from a director's point of view, I find directing comedies quite tricky comparatively, because they're Shakespeare's comedies are so intricate. You have all these subplots, right, all over the place, and so it's a lot to keep track of, and the timing of things is really, really important. And Jared, like you said, there's all these jokes, and a lot of the real, and especially with Shakespeare, you have to know them, because if you don't, they won't make sense.
Just very dated analogies sometimes.
Yeah. And with tragedies, I find that, I don't know, I find them almost a little bit more accessible. Granted, we're not murdering kings out here, I hope, but but as far as like human emotion and the human condition, and I mean, I think as actors, we tend to tap into the serious nature of things, and we love feeling that drama and all that stuff. So, I mean, I just find it more accessible, and I find it, compared to comedies, a lot more straightforward, because you don't have, 37 subplots. It's relatively easy to follow the story. This script was far easier for me to edit than Much Ado was. Much Ado was a pain in the butt trying to edit that to still make it make sense and be at 90 minutes. And even then we got to an hour 45. So I find tragedies, when I approach them, I just naturally am able to dig into them a little bit easier than I do with comedies. And I felt that way in school as well, when I would have to write papers and all these discussions. For some reason, I was just drawn to the tragedies. So I just find them a bit more accessible on my end. But that's good, because then working on comedies keeps me on my toes.
That totally speaks to your emo side.
I just blast My Chemical Romance as I'm working on scripts.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, they definitely each have a rhythm and a pacing, and that's what it comes down to. And sometimes, not sometimes, definitely in Shakespeare's comedies, the timing can go so fast, just as you said, because of all the subplots. And then when you don't hit it, it's going to fall flat. And so it's, figuring out. And so that's always a very interesting collaborative experience. I think especially like from way back in the day when we did Midsummer Night's Dream, like the timing of the whole play within a play at the end and everything that was going on, and borderline, well, no, it was like a farce by the end of it. And so that's a whole different, the rhythm and the trust with the other actors in that, and that energy staying up there. I love that you use the word energy, Josiah, because it's like, yeah, you still need to be able to have all that energy to keep the words moving along. And it's so much easier sometimes when you hear laughter, but definitely in a tragedy, there are times where Shakespeare makes it clear that he wants it to be one on top of the other. And so it's kind of like coordinating an entire orchestra, I would think, kind of a very complex symphonic orchestra for the comedy, actually, whereas the tragedy is perhaps a more of a simple quartet that just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers of the melody. I don't know. That's how I kind of
I love that.
think of it.
And not to say that, of course, the tragedies don't have pacing, because my goodness, that Act 5, man, let's go. But it's a very, very different kind of pacing and all that stuff.
Yes.
I also think, well, how does working on a tragedy compare to working on a comedy? I think something that's important is finding the comedy in the tragedy as well, and vice versa. With comedy, you have to find the tragedy as well. They coexist, they work together, and if you can't find one and the other, I don't think you're approaching it well. So all of Shakespeare's comedies have the potential to become tragedies. The way that they start, the way that they're set up, there's always these high stakes, but they don't. But then I think in the tragedies, if you're not able to find some kind of humor in them, you're going to go nuts. I mean, that's why Shakespeare wrote in the Porter scene. That's why, honestly, it was great at Titletown when everyone was laughing at Banquo's ghost. Because they just saw like the ridiculousness of it. And if you don't find those moments, man, working on a tragedy is going to be terrible.
Yeah, that's one thing before Josiah hops, I want to put him on the spot about, I mean, because Macbeth, obviously heavy story, heavy character, the character's losing his mind. And then yet, right, there's the Porter scene, and then you're seeing this hallucination of a ghost. And yeah, I don't know, how did that impact you as an actor when you had to be growing in paranoia and yet at the same time this literal comic relief? I don't know. How did that affect you at all?
Yeah, that is a great question, because I felt like because the scene right before the Porter anyway is very heightened in emotion. And then trying to keep it all together while Mike is up there doing his thing or Steven is up there doing their thing. It was tough, honestly, to stay in character, just knowing that they're on stage just killing it. But I think it was just the mindset thing of just, like I said, trying to stay in character, reminding myself of where I am, and reminding myself of where I'm coming from and where I'm going in those spaces. That really helped. But yeah, like I said, it was hard because those guys were hilarious, and I wanted to laugh so many times.
Yeah, going off of that. Yeah, audiences caught on to the irony. Yeah, "'Twas a rough night" is one of my favorite lines.
I know.
You were born of woman, Josiah, when you killed young Sue and were like, "You were born of woman," and then walked away, and everyone, and then, oh yeah, this always got a laugh too. My line of, "If he hadn't looked like my father as he slept, I'd have done it."
Yeah, and that one got me too, because I'm like, I don't know, I didn't find that one funny, but a lot of people did, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm unfunny.
Yeah, no, the ironic comedy, I think it's a testament to the writing, and it's a testament to how we delivered it. Because you're holding it together, because of course Macbeth's not going to find it funny, and the more just the more committed and serious you are to the honesty of it, it just comes across as funny. That honesty. Well, Josiah, I know you have to hop off very soon. Is there anything you'd like to share before you have to leave us?
Oh man. Well, I do want to say if you are interested in, you know, performing Shakespeare, I will definitely co-sign that. Play by play is a great place too. And this is, I mean, I'm not getting any kickback from this at all. But I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better experience. I mean, just the cast, the direction of it all, everything that I've learned. I mean, oh my goodness, for this to be my first foray into Shakespeare, like I couldn't have asked for a better experience. So if you are thinking about it, definitely come out and audition.
And you couldn't have given a better performance as your first. I mean,
Seriously, I mean, just
Thank you.
the preparedness, the openness, the collaboration, the eagerness, and then literally after performances, people would just say, "Oh my God, that Macbeth, he's fabulous." I said, "Yeah, this is his first time." So, just
Well, thank
saying,
you. Y'all made it easy and y'all made it super fun. So I'm
well
looking
earned
forward to-
praise, Josiah.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hopefully y'all have me back in some way, shape, or form. I want to perform with you all again.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say details, but we will be returning next summer. So,
Woo-hoo. All right. I think my appointment just got here, y'all.
all right. We'll
Talk to
see you
y'all.
later. Bye,
Bye.
Josiah. Thank
Bye.
you. I just like Macbeth. He's out like a brief candle. All right, you three are stuck with me for a little while longer. I got some more questions. No, seriously, like people would always just super compliment him, and rightfully so, and could not believe that playing Macbeth was his very first Shakespeare production.
I mean, I mean, and he even didn't start doing anything until like 2 years ago, as far as the local. I think 21 may have been the first show he did at Green Bay Community Theater, and like
in our area.
Josiah,
when you hop back on to watch the replay of this, comment below.
That's right.
Yeah. Here we go. Since we're kind of on the topic, how did you find it performing in 3 different locations? So for those who may not know, we've pretty much only done one location on one day, or 2 shows one day. Romeo and Juliet was 2 weekends, yada, yada, yada. But it's always just been in one place. And this year, after we did Whitney Park, we were contacted by some people and some things were shifted around, yada, yada, yada. So then we ended up performing at Heritage Hill in the Moravian Church, and then at Titletown on the Grand Stairs with Lambeau Field in the background. And everybody loved my Google Forms. Are you free? Are you free? Are you free? And then adjusting for those who couldn't make it, and then giving new roles, which I'm sure Teresa and Hannah will talk about that. But yes, this was the first year that we were in 3 different locations in one summer. Wild. So, how was it for you?
it was crazy. It was fun though. I mean, Heritage Hill, I think, I don't want to but that was amazing. I wish everyone could have experienced Heritage Hill's performance, because it was the perfect play to do in there. Almost like it just felt like so natural almost to be in that space doing that. It was really cool, but yeah, it got me a little bit. Titletown was the one I had a little bit of trouble like adjusting to, I think, for some reason. Because it was just like, it was kind of the same setup of like part, you know what I mean? So it's like we're back outside. It was almost easier at Heritage Hill, even though it was an inside space and like completely different, because it was like quickly learning new blocking and like, okay, this entrance is but then like when we were at Titletown, I kept almost like going back to Whitney Park and being like, no, that's not it. This is the different park. So that one was a little bit more challenging for me for some reason.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's I keep harping on the how good the cast was, but the testament to having everyone around you also be able to roll with the punches, so to speak, on that stuff is it's so helpful. because you are worrying about missing an entrance in the right spot now because you're moving to a different space, and there's more concern as far as what's floating around in your head on top of, okay, well, I got to come out there and perform. But I'd agree, the intimacy offered by the church after coming out of a park performance was really was very refreshing, and then having to refine the energy for the more open space of the steps was top of mind, I guess, at least for me, as I was going through my warm up and everything in my head. Like, all right, we got the microphones, but we still gotta. So.
Yeah.
I like what you said too about everyone. I really felt that too. Everyone was just really able to just kind of, okay, we're here, we're doing it, let's go. Like, it was just like, that's what I do love, what Josiah was saying earlier about working with play-by-play, is that I feel like every production I've done, the level of just like the commitment and the maturity, not maturity, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's just like the flow is just good. Like everyone is just ready to perform or ready to work. We're here to put on a performance, the professionalism. That's what I was looking for. I think everyone who's involved in this really wants to just do their best and give an amazing production. And we all are just, it feels like everyone just came together and was like, we got this, we can figure it out. No worries.
Yeah.
There wasn't anyone, like everyone just kind of trusted each other. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was really nice to have such a reliable group of people, because we planned as much as we could. And then, of course, we all know for both performances, things happened. People had to drop out last minute, which is how Teresa got in a performance early. Because she was originally only supposed to be a witch in the last one. Then brought her in. Same thing with Mike. He wasn't supposed to be in it at all. And then 2 weeks before Here to Chill, hey, Mike, we need someone. And then, of course, Titletown being an actor down that day, outside of anyone's control. And then having Will and Liz, our stage manager, step in with scripts in hand. I mean, no matter what, we had our plan, and I trusted that people would review, reach out if they had questions, because for each one, we only had one rehearsal just to refresh our memories. And then even when things weren't perfect or shifted, we all went with it because we all were prepared and supportive. And it was just a great group to work with. And I felt really safe with you all.
Oh, I love that. And to expand on that for a moment, I think it's also a little bit of because you mentioned Mike, and for anybody who's watching this who doesn't know what Mike Eskergon, but he's been in other shows with play-by-play, Shakespearean specific shows. And so I find, like, with play-by-play being around for now the 5th year of Shakespeare in the Park, right? There's definite people who, you have a definite core of people who always want to audition, if they can, want to be a part of it. And then when they can't, like for this past summer, Mike originally couldn't be in the original production, but it's like you have that connection to him and he's worked with you already. So it's kind of like that feeling of safety, where his strengths are, and he knows how to work with you, and he knows how to slide in with the whole group. And so I think that also speaks then to what Hannah mentioned before about the professionalism. There's a certain, you attract, play-by-play is attracting. You have to be kind of weirdos like we are to be into Shakespeare anyway, am I right? But then you like it, so you're attracting a certain persona type of actor who wants to be in Shakespeare. And then also, like we all know, like, oh, we can't fake our way through it. And the fact that we care so much about the story, I think, is what made it also like, so yes, there were issues out of our control. So yes, I was going to step in for Steve, and yes, Liz stepped in for Grace, and yes, Will stepped in, because it's like, well, we know the story is more important and we care about these people. And this is kind of our way to honor them because things happened. But it's also our way to, yeah, just to keep the story professional, keep the production professional. I think that's part of it also. I love that you used safety because it does talk about, I feel like, a certain level of trust that you've been able to, I feel like with this cast especially, but maybe it was because it's the 5th year. I don't know. There was something kind of magical with this year, I feel like.
I think it was Rachel. She said, "This is the first time I was in a show where there was no drama."
And yet we had people dropping like flies.
You know what I mean.
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
it was just, oh, hello. Child, there's a child.
Sorry.
Child has entered the chat. Speaking of, we had a child. Well, she's in high school now in this production. Our young actor, Caitlin, she crushed it. She was another one that took on an additional role for the Titletown performance. And again, freshman in high school, trusted her, knew she could do it. Just, yeah, everybody was fab. I'm going to.
David really liked the production, FYI. I just wanted to let you guys know.
Oh, that's right.
He got to see it twice at Whitney Park and at Titletown. He was a little disappointed about no smoke machine at Titletown. He mentioned it specifically. So
did anybody else want to speak to this at all? Okay. I'm going to go back to this one because we talked a lot about the first part of it. But if anybody has anything else about what was everyone's favorite part of working on this production, I mean, I kind of talked about, we all said the people. I mean, the group was just really, really great. From a director standpoint, it was really nice to come into a rehearsal, be able to joke around, but then say, okay, now we got to work. And then, have people pay attention. That was great.
I think a lot of us had said throughout the production that, and we're going to toot Josiah's horn again, just his level of commitment to the show and to his performance, I think just kind of trickled down to the rest of us. And it just, for me, at least, I wanted to he always came in giving 1,000%, like every rehearsal, every performance. And it just really made me, I would come in and he'd kill it. And I just want to be like, all right, we're going to match the energy. We're going to go. And I just kind of felt like everyone in the cast we just matched each other's energy and flow so well. And that, for me, honestly, like this cast was probably my favorite part of this production, was just being able to play with each other and build these characters and build this story and build this little world. I feel like we really made ourselves a little Shakespeare world, like we created this little, we didn't create the story, but we, for ourselves, it just felt whole almost like there wasn't any part of the show that I felt like was like, I don't know, like I've been in performances and shows before where it's like some spots are a little bit weaker than others. And there's some scenes where you're like, oh, I could have worked out a little bit better. But honestly, like just the flow of everything from start to finish, I felt was so strong. It was just really, really fun to be a part of.
For me, this being kind of the second time I've done Macbeth in a different role, kind of to a point that Carolyn had mentioned earlier about exploring the text and finding new things. Even just having whatever vague knowledge still floated in my brain from other people's performances in high school, but being able to indulge in the tragedy of it, there's a certain satisfaction to the point of kind of being an actor and liking to feel that drama, so to speak, or embody that drama. But I think this being the second time through, in addition to with it being such a strong cast, was probably my favorite part of the production. I don't know. It's again, it is different than the comedies. Being able to unabashedly be like, you've killed the king, and now I have to be aghast and mad and sad and figure out what that means for me when I have so many lines to say as much, and then I kind of just listen the rest of the time and have to respond. But there's work in there. There's meat,
Like throwing in moments of, oh, this dinner party is going downhill. Let me steal the champagne and run away. Like I love when people come up with moments like that.
Yes.
And I think we were like, it was our first times going through the scene, and I think Mary just went, "Yes, Jara, keep it."
It made it real. It was honest.
Yeah, when people are just, they understand what's happening and you're in the moment and you just make those choices. It's great.
Well, and what you said, Carolyn, about feeling safe is, I think we all felt safe to kind of make those choices for our characters, and we knew enough that if you didn't like it, we're gonna just tell us you didn't like it, and we were fine with that. You know what I mean? Like, it was just kind of like, we're gonna try, we're gonna play, we're gonna do something, and we're just gonna. And it was just such a safe environment where, like, you weren't afraid to explore your character. Almost where it's like, I've been in environments before where it's almost like, if the director says, jump, you jump, and that's the only time you jump, and that's it, and you can't do anything else, and so it's just like, I appreciate you giving us a freedom to kind of play and explore these parts, ourselves too. It was really nice.
Well, and thank you. And I'm glad that you all felt that way, because it also, pulling double duty on my end, made it easier for me to make the transition when I had to be in the scene, and then having Teresa and Mary, be two more pairs of eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that this play's structured, it helped that Lady Macbeth is mostly just with Macbeth most of the time, right? So there's that natural separation. But because everybody was just solid and paying attention, and it really made jumping into, okay, now I'm in actor mode and then I'm director mode, not feel awkward, which was really great and very supportive. And I'm glad that people were, willing to work with me on both fronts. because it really was wonderful, and it meant a lot to me to have that support from the cast as well.
Yeah, and that's actually probably what I appreciated. Well, that was the only thing I was initially doing, right, was being the assistant director. But I thought it was like, what a cool gift to collaborate with y'all, because you had your vision of how you wanted the story to be as the director. But then when you would, especially, I don't know, like that Mary would then be able to see things from a different angle. And then I felt my strengths are really honing in on people's individual choices, and just helping them bring out more to bring their characters to life. And so I was like, what a cool process. It was almost like, there were three of us, but not to be trite, but it was like a 3-dimensional, like we were able to get this whole, right? You were able to get your own insight, Mary's insight, and then my insight. Or then when you knew, like, okay, this person needs more help, like, right, to just pass along to me, and that I could take time with that person to just push through. Okay, then where's the block for the character not being honest, or to help them get to those choices. It was just I would probably love to be the witch again, be one of the witches again, because you
got a lot of praise from the audience after that Titletown performance. Miss Bellatrix.
I was totally channeling Bellatrix, yes. But it was such a really lovely collaborative process with you and Mary to be able to examine all the layers, not just on the page, but also then with the bodies, with the actors, with the scenes. So that was my favorite part of the production. So
I also really loved Burnham Wood.
Plus the Burnham Wood.
Burnham Wood that Eric would bring every time, just chopped down from his backyard.
The laugh it got at Titletown was probably, I don't feel like it got that big of a laugh at the other two.
Well, for Titletown, Burnham Wood, and Jara was part of Burnham Wood. They started like way back.
Oh yeah,
and then had this major running start with their branch.
it was
Yeah.
awesome.
The
It was-
sightline's
and, like,
the sightline's weird when you're holding a whole branch over here. Like I don't want to.
Oh, so good.
Oh gosh, Burnham Wood. That was another nice example of finding comedy and tragedy. I mean, we kind of made it ridiculous, but it's kind of ridiculous.
But yeah, the conceit itself is it's fairly ridiculous conceit.
I got another question here for you. How do you find
Ooh.
performing Shakespeare differs from performing other types of theater? I have a lot to say, so I won't start.
So many words.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to like process the question.
I mean, it's almost like you have to do a in-depth deep dive into the play before you can even begin to like do a character. You know, it's like I love creating backstories. I mean, Teresa knows this from when we did some shows together. It's like it's just one of the things that I love the most, and I love diving in. And I feel like Shakespeare, it's like built in. You have to dive in. You have to explore the entire play. You have to know what's happening from start to finish. And you have to like, at least for me, I have to dig deep, and I have to like, because otherwise I don't know what's going on. If I'm not that familiar with it, like I kind of need to start from the beginning and go through. I did it with Romeo and Juliet. I did it with this one, with when I was in Midsummer. It's like I need to understand everything, and I want to understand everyone, and you have to really study it, the script, more than I think I've done with other shows, because it's, like Teresa said, the literature, it's Old English, like it's not. So there's just that whole process before you even begin to like memorize your lines and like get into your character. You have to really study the show, which I think just makes you appreciate the show so much more. That's, for me, it is. And I just, anyway, that's my
I agree. I find as a performer, there's it's like a deconstruction process I have to go through to strip away everything that I would normally approach with contemporary theater, and then just kind of somehow deconstruct all of that so I can rebuild to what Shakespeare is telling me is the story. And it's a trick, it's definitely an exercise. It's worth it. But that's, I think, that for me, that's the biggest difference, is you must unlearn everything you have learned.
Yeah. And to both of your points, unlike contemporary theater, where we are kind of conditioned to look at our character and start diving into our character's intentions and all their characteristics before getting into the scene, before doing the lines. It's always character work. And that's how we approach contemporary theater. And with Shakespeare, you can't do that. You can't start with character work. You have to start with the text. You have to look at it. You have to read it, because that will then inform your character. Yeah, it's very opposite of what we're kind of ingrained and what we're taught to do with contemporary theater.
And I think that's where some people get scared, or turned off almost, where it's like, they're like, well, I can't, what are they, and it's like, you have to work at it. Like, it's not easy. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to pick up Shakespeare and perform it tomorrow for the first time, and it's going to be brilliant. Like, it's not, you have to put that effort. You have to learn and dig. And so I think that's what's really cool about it, is that you have to really want it, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know.
I'd say the everyone's spot on with that beginning process. Once you're through the audition, you got your role now. You've got your role in front of you, and you're looking at it. That upfront prep is definitely different compared with the contemporary script, for sure. I find that there's a lot of really, speaking about breaking the rules and the actual performing piece of it, there are so many particular things with doing Shakespeare because of the nature of the monologue or the soliloquy or the history of how it was performed, the spaces it was performed in. There's all this unexplicitly non-explicit information that you're getting that you have to be able to process and work with in the actual performance. Whereas with a more contemporary show, you can usually reliably rely on that. Your rules are just different for how you're moving, holding yourself on stage, and how you're moving about, because it is elevated to some extent, which is, it's a double-edged sword for Shakespeare, because it's easy to over elevate, especially when you're talking about the acting element with it. So on the performing end, maintaining that momentum and energy, but then using it in the right way to make sure you're not going too over the top, I think is a big difference.
Yeah, to keep it heightened. And I always talk about keeping things heightened, but you still need to keep it realistic, right? Because if you keep it, Jared, like you were saying, too heightened, too over the top, that's when you get this. I have a skull ready. Alas, boy. I mean, that's when you get that, right? That's when you get the stereotypical Shakespeare.
Carolyn, is it bejeweled? It is. It is. Okay. I just needed to. Sorry.
This is going to make its way into a Shakespeare production someday.
I don't understand how it hasn't yet.
It's a Hamlet Studio 54.
Yeah. For now, bejeweled Yorick
Next
just
year,
sits on my desk.
in the park, Hamlet Studio 54. Yes.
But that's when you're heightened, but you go too far and you lose the realism of it, is when you get that over the top Shakespeare that makes people think, oh, Shakespeare. Because if you lose the realism of it, then no one's going to know what the heck is going on. So you have to like get there, and then reel it back ever so slightly.
Personally, as a performer, I think it stretches me every year. Like it challenges. I don't know. Like there's a great. It sounds incredibly selfish, but as a performer, you do hope you grow, right? I mean, you do hope you grow, and I feel like I always grow whenever we do production, because it forces you. It forces you to, because it's like if you don't know what you're saying, like it's gonna bomb. So it really does just. Yeah. It forces you to expand.
It forces you to use theatrical muscles that you don't normally do or don't normally use. And when you're out of shape, you're out of shape.
Doubled over and heaving on the sideline. Yes. Just like panic.
I mean, and I could go on and on about the language and how important that is and the clues, but I'll save that for another day. But I mean, that's just words are always important, but with Shakespeare, you should be able to close your eyes, not see anything, and know exactly what's going on and who's going where and who's doing what, because it's written that way. And so if you don't have that, you don't have a show. Whereas contemporary theater, yes, words are always important. That's why we have them. But, I think contemporary theater, you can get away, obviously, with more visuals. Right? Shakespeare was written for no visuals, for no sets, for no lights, which is why the words are so descriptive. And so if you don't know, like you said, if you don't know what you're saying, you don't have it. You don't have a show.
And I can imagine that's frustrating for you at a certain level every year, that you have to remind the actors that. But honestly, it's when everything is on screens, you know what I mean? Like we're just so used to the visual, we take it for granted. And it's such an important reminder of day one. Like, yeah, you have to realize there are so many words because there were not props or like the beginning of everything that we consider.
Yeah, your words
Scripts
are the set pieces.
Right.
Your words are the lights. I mean, how many times, I should have counted, how many times in Macbeth do they talk about, look how dark it is outside? And it's like noon. Because they had to, so that the audience understood, oh, okay, got it. It's nighttime. Cool.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't hit that home, it's just going to be confusing. You
think
are the set.
That's the beauty of the kind of circling a little bit ish around quickly through the question about the Denzel Washington Macbeth. I mean, that's part of the cinematography in that project is just outrageous, and yeah,
stunning.
it's a whole nother set of tools for accomplishing whether you're trying to express whatever's happening internally with that character or between the characters' relationships and all stuff. You have all these tools that you have as a director in like the staging, kind of, but not to the same degree that you would in the film setting, where you can do all the really cool camera tricks and the very visually stunning things.
I think kind of performing Shakespeare / directing Shakespeare, producing Shakespeare kind of forces you to be more creative, I think, because I mean, you get your script, and depending on your edition or what your director gives you, I mean, there's very little in way of stage directions. Here's what you're wearing. There's not a costume list. There's not a prop list. There's not.
You're not getting extensive character bios.
No.
Prince Aeschylus. He's the prince. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And like, cause in the stage directions you get, enters, exits. But then when you have a long scene, you're like, oh, what are we doing? Whereas modern scripts, they'll tell you exactly what they want. Raise your right hand, and that's just like Hannah, you were saying before, sometimes, directors do that too. And I've been very specific with certain things too, but like scripts, now you get all those details, very, very specific about what the actor should be doing on stage. You don't get this here. My favorite little anecdote is to share about stage directions with Shakespeare is with Romeo and Juliet. And you look at all of these editions now, which have been edited so that it's easier to read, not so that it's easier to perform, which is why I do my own edits. But in almost every edition you get now of Romeo and Juliet, in the balcony scene, it says, enter Juliet from above or enter Juliet on her balcony. And that wasn't in print until the 19th century.
Wow.
So this like big iconic moment that we all are expecting wasn't in print until the 1800s, and it was written in the late 1500s, so it's just really interesting. They had a lot less back then, and then now we start to get more just based on how people have edited things. That's my favorite example of that. It may not have existed originally, who knows. No, I'm sure it did to a point, because Shakespeare's language is very descriptive. And I'm sure he said something about it, orchard walls and all. But the literal stage direction of Juliet enters above did not appear in print until the 19th century. So.
Wow.
I think that lack of explicit stage direction, but then the idea that how those words are literally put on the page, where they are, where the sentences break and don't break, and all that. But that's a benefit of doing multiple Shakespeare things, comedies, tragedies, etc. Is it builds that muscle, so to speak, for when you're doing your prep process. A sentence that might have really, or a block of a verse of words would have maybe stumble blocked you a little bit longer originally, but you're like, oh, this is kind of like, okay, yeah, okay. It helps inform the decisions you're making in the emotions of the character, for sure.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask one more question, and we'll see if anybody else has stuff. I mean, we kind of talked about your preparation for this and all that stuff, but I'd love for you guys to talk about your characters a little bit, and specifically, those who had to take on a new character. What was that like? Because you certainly had a truncated rehearsal process. And other things like and like Lennox's character, we added some stuff for him. So if you have any insights into your specific characters and anything like that, I think would be interesting.
I think when you have a character like Lennox, where he gets some really solid, flowery, very, very decorated lines, so to speak. Just a very, very lyrically written, or so much as it needs to do the sovereign flower and drown the weeds. I mean, that's that has to happen, fall out of the mouth a certain way, otherwise
He's
you can
very
immediately
poetic,
tell. It's very
Lennox.
poetic. Yeah, you can tell immediately when you but working yeah with the character of Lennox in particular, it's interesting because he gets a certain amount of say in certain scenes, but again, it's finding the opportunities. I think for me that's really satisfying, finding the opportunities to continue to give you an idea of what's going on for that character in their head, especially with Lennox, because it's a character that's very good friends, or at least friends with Macbeth at the start of everything. He's cool, noble lord, no good sir. And then by the end of it, you have to see, I have to figure out what his journey looks like, so that by the end it's believable when he's going on about some calling Macbeth mad, and the tyrant, and how he's fortifying where he's at, and all that sort of business. He's got not nice words for him, so he's clearly getting from that point A of good morning, noble sir, all the way to he's tyrant, essentially, is part of the fun. It was part of the fun.
Lennox really has like major shift in language, and Lennox is a supporting character, right? The play's called Macbeth. He's not Macbeth, but that's why all of the supporting characters outside of the big guy are so important into helping tell his descent into tyranny and all of this stuff. And so then seeing, the shift in language from Lennox was really, really interesting, and is something that it was really fun to discover as a director too. Like, oh, this dude, oh, this guy, yes.
Yeah.
Same thing with Malcolm as well, another character that just had this major shift in language. And Grace and I talked a lot about it, because Malcolm, I feel like, sometimes gets a bad rep of being this like whiny brat. But to be like, okay, well, why is he a whiny brat? Maybe, well, because he's not ready to be king, right? And then gets thrown into this, but then the shift in language at the end is just so powerful, and definitely not something to overlook. It tells you a lot about your character arc. Yeah, that shift in language. We also added in Lennox into the scene with Lady Macduff and Macduff's son, because originally that's just like some random dude that comes in that's like, hey, there are bad guys here, you should go. And I was reading it, and I always, again, try to make sure my cast doesn't get too big. But I was like, you know what? Let's make this Lennox, because the scene before, he's with Macbeth, and Macbeth like gives him, the order to go unalive Macduff's family. And then Lennox's next scene is he's like, Macbeth's a tyrant. You're like, well, I know that there's a lot of stuff that happens off stage for characters, but it was nice to be like, you know what, let's get rid of this random dude and make it Lennox as his trying to help. He has this shift, and we actually get to see it, that he's like, ooh, actually not a good guy. I'm gonna try to fix things.
Yeah.
And just like a little thing like that little edit.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good. It was a very good, because he doesn't like. He doesn't hear explicitly Macbeth being like, "I'm gonna go send someone to kill them," because but he, I'm sure, just to Hannah's point, to kind of creating that backstory and stuff, like finding those motivations for the character, and making sure it continues to make a wonderful narrative blanket, at least even as a supporting character, when you don't necessarily have monologue after monologue after monologue. There's still a lot of content to be gnawed on. Again, meat on the bone. There's plenty of meat on that bone, role wise, especially with Shakespeare, because of yeah, it's how he uses language when you're talking about that shift. Because again, it's Lennox speaks a couple of times in the beginning, then has a little bit, and then you see the shift, and then thing, but there's still a journey that happens there over the course of when you see him. So yeah.
Teresa, Hannah.
It was so much fun to do. This was one of my favorite roles to have. I mean, I get crazy with my backstory. I create an entire journey from being born until the day I die. Like, that's just how I prepare. Like, it's just, but it was so much fun to play with the other two girls. Like, and Teresa, when you got to be in the last show with us as which one, like, it was really cool to kind of figure out. And it's always fun when Shakespeare does like a supernatural element too, because you weren't really sure, like, who are the weird sisters? Like, are they magic? Are they not? Like, they seem to be really telling the future, or are they just making these things, is it self-fulfilling prophecy? It's like all this sort of stuff. You don't really know if they have it or not. In my mind, I was a full-on witch, and I lived in the Scottish Highlands, and these men came, took over my land, and I was going to curse them all. Like, that was my mindset going into this show. Like, that's who I was. And so
I love that.
My sisters and I had lived here, like thousands of years, Miss of Avalon style. Like, you invaded us and we're going to ruin you. So, whether or not that was Shakespeare's original intention, probably not. But that's what it was it's fun. There was that room to play and grow with it. And then, all three of us kind of went different ways with it too, with how we acted and like just our personalities and all that sort of stuff was really fun as well. And then being able to be gentlewoman was cool because it was a complete shift. It was opposite. I tried to play her, I was your handmaiden. Like, I looked at it as like, this is my lady. Like, I take care of you and I'm worried about you and I'm scared and I'm nervous and I don't know what's going on. And there was such power with being the witch. Like, I was not afraid of anybody else that was around me ever. I'm not afraid of Macbeth. I'm not afraid of Macbeth. I'm not afraid of any of you all. Like, please. Like, it was just like this powerful character. And then it was fun to be able to be the gentlewoman and be this like scared, demure, like worried person. It was really cool to be able to kind of do that shift. I liked that a lot. I was excited to be able to do both roles.
Yeah, I remember you texted me. You just said, I am having so much fun digging into the role of the gentlewoman.
And it was, though, because it was just totally opposite of what I had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy that I got to do a scene with you. And I love that scene so much. And
it was really cool in the church.
Oh my God, it was so like, I was like freaking out. Like, you were so creepy. And it was so cool. Oh, and so it was just really, really fun. I was so excited to be a part of that scene as well, because it's such an iconic moment, for Lady Macbeth, and you did such an amazing job. And so it was really to play off of you and with the doctor. It was really fun.
Shout out to Susan, and also shout out to Sanibel.
Yeah, Sanibel is amazing
because she was unable to join the last two because she went back to school. But what was fun or interesting, I mean, her gentlewoman's so different. Your gentleman's so different. So it was really fun to see, like, okay, like the crux and core of the production did not change, but you put in a different actor, knowing, and obviously you were at all the rehearsals, so you knew the intention and what we needed. And Teresa, I'm sure you feel the same stepping into these other roles too. So you already know that, but then to bring something completely different to it was really exciting. And like, how cool is that to have the same exact production, same words, very different performances. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
Definitely. And I'll just, not too much to say, but that as far as for me, practically speaking, if there's, Seward and young Seward, I was like, want my lines to, I don't know, for me, it made sense. Like for me to like, what is my purpose in this moment? Literally, it was like that one brief scene. What is my purpose? Oh, and I'm there with my son. Oh, therefore, like I wanted to make sure that there was just practically speaking to help the audience know Seward and young Seward. And so then when it came full circle at the end after he had been killed, like, I don't know, like that there was my son had a good death, but there was a connection there, right? You know, like I was trying to just figure out my purpose in that shortness. And
Well, it didn't help that I also like severely cut lines out. I was like, let's just get to the point.
So
where's your son? Your son's dead. Oh,
bummer.
I mean, is essentially what I cut it to.
I mean, who is it at that point of the play? So I mean,
It puts a lot of pressure to be like, okay, but let's make sure that this makes sense as an yeah.
Right. But yet at the same time, the scene when there was that earlier scene, like at least you knew, like, okay, obviously I'm the one who's got 10,000 men riled up, so woo, you know, and my son's one of them, and we're gonna, you know, if we can't beat them, then we're gonna die a good death. It reminded me, it was very Klingon, old school Star Trek, like it was very like, so. But I always like to find the purpose. And then on a practical note for being the witch, the way you had edited it, and I, unlike you, did not go back into any original folios, looked up anything, but at least with which one, like starting off every scene, right? Like every scene. So I was like, okay, for me, I'm like automatically, which one has to be boom? Like for me, it just felt like the force of a cannonball every time I came on stage. It's kind of why I did my hair all crazy Bellatrixy too. Like just like if you're the first one out on the stage to be able to, you know, I'm like, I've got 3 seconds here to kind of help the audience grasp what is happening here. So, or at least set the tone for it. Right. So that was kind of my mindset with that, as far as my purpose of, in 3 seconds, I need to communicate, we are weird sisters.
They're weird.
So
they're weird. Yeah, which is very iconic, very important, because this is actually considered a Jacobean play, because it was written when James the First was on the throne, and he wrote a book called Demonology, about demons and witches, and he famously led witch hunts and witch trials in Scotland, some of the bloodiest. But he had this obsession with the supernatural, and so Shakespeare wrote this to be like, hey, King, I got you. I'm just going to say mine very, very briefly. I won't take up too much time. But Lady Macbeth is hands down my favorite character in all of Shakespeare, has been since 5th grade. And it was really important for me to make sure that in working with Josiah, that we made our characters equals and we made them partners, and that Lady Macbeth didn't get too overbearing and pushy, and that Macbeth didn't get too cowering and, you know, all that stuff, because otherwise it doesn't work. The dynamic doesn't work if they're not treated as equals. He literally calls her my dearest partner of greatness. So it was, even though she has all of this drive and dark moments and all this stuff, she and Macbeth still need to be at the same level, as far as intention and making sure they're on the same page. So that was really important for me, to make sure that got across in our dynamic. And I love to share this too, that a lot of Shakespeare scholars agree that the Macbeths have the healthiest relationship of all of Shakespeare's characters, specifically because of their partnership and their communication. And
there is good communication and some trust. There's trust.
Yeah, like they are the most in love. They are the most equal. They have each other's back.
Can accomplish great things when you're on the same page.
Exactly.
They've got similar goals, similar life goals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Murder.
They're definitely very transparent with
Yep.
each other.
No secrets.
No,
No secrets. But but it was also important to make sure, you know, she wasn't just evil. Because that's really easy to come across, is she's just evil. She's just a jerk. She's just horrible. And she makes Macbeth do bad things. No, there's more to her. So that's my little Lady Macbeth spiel. So cool. Well, I think that does it. Unless you guys have any final words to say. Got your work here.
Just that I look forward to auditioning for more things in the future. Yeah, more Shakespeare, you know.
More Shakespeare.
yes. I know.
Fab. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. For those of you at home, we have our fundraiser coming up, but tickets are gone. Sorry, but you can still donate to Play by Play if you would like. You can go to our website, playbyplaytheater.org. to learn more about that. Become a sustaining donor by making monthly donations, quarterly donations. You can help us ensure that we always have the funds to be able to put on productions and special events without having to ask you for money every single time. And then also we are doing the Woman in Black, a live radio play with Heritage Hill at the end of October, which should be a fun time. And yeah. Great. I made sure, in honor of Macbeth, I wore my spoopy cat ghost sweater. Spooky season is upon us. Teresa, Hannah, Jara, thank you for joining me, and the entire cast and crew of Macbeth. Thank you for a fabulous summer, and hope to see you all very soon. I'm trying to think of a witty Shakespeare goodbye, and I can't.
Partying is such sweet sorrow.
There we go. Goodbye.